Hello, it's Paige Green from Paige Green's Tutoring, and today we're going to be having a look at comparing and ordering fractions. Now, before we start, there's just a couple of key skills that we need to be aware of before going into this video. So having a look at this first fraction, we've got 4/7 and 3/7, and I want to say which one's bigger. Well, if we think about it, if we had 2 bars of chocolate, let's say, and they were both had 7 chunks of chocolate, you ate 4/7 of the chocolate and I ate 3/7 of the chocolate, you would have eaten more because you've had more chunks of chocolate out of that 7. So 4/7 would be bigger. Now for the next one, we've got 4/8 and 4/9. So this time our numerators are the same, but our denominators are different. So this time you need to think about it as if it was a cake. Let's say we had a cake and we cut it into 8 pieces. Think about how big those pieces would be. Now let's take a cake and split it into 9 pieces. Think about how big those pieces are going to be. You might realise that actually when we split the cake into 9 pieces, the slices are going to be smaller because we're trying to share it out between more people. So if I had 4 slices of the cake that would split into 8 and 4 slices of the cake that was split into 9, I would have more cake if I took it from the cake that was split into 8. So therefore, 4/8 would be bigger than 4/9. So 2 things that you need to remember here. When our denominators are the same in this first one, then the one that's bigger is the one with the bigger numerator. Now, when our numerators are the same, the one with the smaller denominator is the bigger fraction. So they're just 2 facts that you need to remember. Now the next one, we're going to look at creating equivalent fractions. So I've got 3/5 and I want to make it something over 15. So the first thing I do is say, well, how did I get from 5 to 15? Well, I had to multiply it by 3. Now you might have heard the saying, whatever we do to the bottom, we do to the top. So if I've times the bottom by 3, I have to times the top by 3. So 3 times 3 would be 9. So 3/5 is the same as saying 9/15. Let's have a go at another fraction. Now you can see this time we've got bigger numbers and they're getting smaller. So instead of timesing, I need to think, what would I divide 35 by to get to 5? Well, here, I would just have to divide it by 7. Now remember, whatever we do to the bottom, we have to do to the top. So I'd do 21 divided by 7, which would give me 3. So 21/35 is the same as 3/5. So we've just had a look there at comparing simple fractions and creating equivalent fractions. So if you're happy with those skills, let's move on to comparing some different fractions and ordering some fractions. Okay, so here we've got 4/5 and 7/15. Now we can't do what we did in the starter because the numerators are different and the denominators are different, so we can't just straight up compare them. What we can do though is if we create an equivalent fraction, we will better be able to compare them. So I've got 7/15. If I make this fraction here also over 15, it should be a little bit easier to compare. So first, let's think what we did to the bottom. Well, 5 times 3 is 15. So that means I have to times the top by 3 as well, which gives me 12/15. Now I can easily see that 12/15 is bigger than 7/15. Let's have a go at this second one. Now there's kind of 2 ways to do it, but I can see that 8 does go into 16. So I can just create an equivalent fraction over 16. What do I times the bottom by? I have to multiply by 2. So that means I have to do the same to the top, which gives me 6/16. So we can see that this time 12/16 would be bigger. Now when I said there's 2 ways of doing that, this time because 8 goes into 16 and we've got an even number on the top as well, we can instead make over 16 over 8. So we can divide the bottom by 2 and we can divide the top by 2. And you can see there how I can see that that is still bigger than 3/8. So you could have done it either way there, but it's always best to pick the smaller one and make it into a bigger fraction. So could you now have a go at these two questions? So pause the video, have a go at comparing those fractions there. Hopefully you've managed to have a go at those. So for this one, let's create an equivalent fraction over 18. So we're going to multiply the bottom by 3. So we have to times the top by 3. So that would be 12 over 18. So here, 13 over 18 would be bigger. This next one then, let's make this over 55. So I can see there I've times the bottom by 5. So I have to times the top by 5. So I've got 45 over 55. Now 45 over 55 is bigger than 43 over 55. Hopefully that's given you an idea about how to compare fractions. We're now going to move on to ordering fractions. So let's have a look at these examples. So this first one, you can see when we're trying to order fractions, we've got a few different denominators. Now, to order them, we are going to make them all equivalent, a bit like we did when we were comparing. Now, the best way to think, well, what can I make all of these over? Well, let's write down the biggest numbers times tables. I'll just write down a few there. And I'm going to go through and see if I could use 20. Well, 20 is a multiple of 5, so I know I could use it there. 20 is a multiple of 20, and 20 is a multiple of 2. So that means that we can times all of these fractions to make them over 20. So let's have a think how to do this. Now, I want to go from fifths to 20ths, so I need to times by 4. So I also have to times my top by 4. So that'd be 12 over 20. 11 over 20 just stays the same because I've times the bottom by 1. And then here, to go from 2 to 20, I need to times by 10. So I also have to times this by 10 as well. So now I can clearly see which ones are bigger and smaller. So here, I'm going to go from smallest to largest. So I can see that my 10 20ths would go first, then my 11 20ths, and then my 12 20ths. However, they're not the fractions it asked us to order. It actually asked us to order these fractions up here. So all we need to do is change our 10 20ths, 11 20ths, and 12 20ths back into the original fractions. So 10 20ths was actually 1/2, 11 20ths was 11 20ths, and then 12 20ths was actually 3 over 5. Next, let's have a look at when we've got 4 fractions. So I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to pick the biggest number, which is 15, and I'm going to write the multiples of those. And now I'm going to go through and see if the other ones are a multiple of those numbers it's given me. 15 is not a multiple of 10, so we know we can't use 15. So now we're going to have to try 30. 30 is a multiple of 10, so that would work. 30 is also a multiple of 5. We know it's a multiple of 15 because we've already wrote that out. And 30 is also a multiple of 3. So because it's a multiple of all 4 of those numbers, I'm going to use that. I'm going to make them all over 30. So let's go through and create equivalent fractions over 30. This one I would have to times by 3, also times the top by 3, which is 21. Here I'd have to times the bottom by 6, so make sure I'm timesing that top by 6. 15 to 30, I just need to times it by 2 here, and make sure I'm doing the same to the top. And then the last one, to get from 3 to 30, I have to times by 10. So I'd get 20 over 30. So let's have a go at now ordering them. So I can clearly see we'd go 16 over 30, 18 over 30, 20 over 30, and 21 over 30. But again, remember, that's not the fractions it asked us to order. so we need to change them back to the original. So 16 over 30 was actually 8 over 15. 18 over 30 was actually 3 over 5. 20 over 30 was 2/3. And 21 over 30 was 7/10. So now I've put them in order from smallest to largest. Using that, could you now have a go at the 2 questions here? So having a go at ordering those from smallest to largest. Okay, let's go over these then. So I'm going to pick the biggest number, which is 20, and I'm going to write out a few multiples. Now let's have a look. 20 is not a multiple of 8, so that definitely won't work. 40 is a multiple of 8, so it would work there. 40 is a multiple of 4, so that would work. 40 is a multiple of 20, and 40 is a multiple of 5. So I know that I'm going to make them all over 40. So for this first one, you'd have to times it by 5, so make sure to do the same to the top. 4 to 40 is just timesing by 10. 20 to 40 is just timesing by 2. And 5 to 40 is timesing by 8. So we'd get 24 over 40. So now putting them order from smallest to largest, we'll get 22 over 40, 24 over 40, 25 over 40, and 30 over 40. And then remembering to get that final mark, we have to switch them back to what they originally were. So 22 over 40 was 11 over 20. 24 over 40 was just 3/5. 25 over 40 was 5/8. And then our 30 over 40 was 3/4. So there we ordered them from smallest to largest. Let's have a go at our next one. So I'm going to take 18 and write down a few multiples. So 18 is a multiple of 3, so that would work. 18 is a multiple of 9, so that would work. 18 is a multiple of 6, and 18 is a multiple of 18. So here we only need to do the first one, which is 18. So making them all equivalent, we're going to times by 6 here, so times by 6 on the top. Here we just need to times by 2, so we'd get 14 on the top. Here we need to times by 3, so we'd get 15 on the top, and then that one would just stay the same. So now ordering them, we've got 11/18, 12/18, and 14/18, and the last one there is 15. Now for that final mark, make sure we're switching them back. Now 11 over 18 was just 11 over 18. 12 over 18 was actually 2/3. 14 over 18 was 7/9. And 15 over 18 was 5/6. So step by step in terms of comparing and ordering fractions. When we create equivalent fractions, it's a lot easier to see which ones are bigger. So when we're comparing, we just need to create a common denominator between those two. But when we're ordering, we need to make sure we've got a multiple of all of the fractions that you've got, just so that you know you can definitely create an equivalent fraction for every single one. So hopefully that video helped comparing and ordering fractions. I will see you in the next video.